Hi, this is Siva Girmala, US County Business Patterns, Partitions and Aggregations. In one of the earlier video, we created partitions for US County Business Patterns cube. And I would like to point a couple of things while building the cube. Then there is a limitation on the number of partitions we can create using SQL Server Standard Edition. We can create at the most 3 partitions for using SQL Server Standard Edition. If we are using any other edition other than SQL Server, SQL Standard Edition, then the number of partitions is unlimited. We can create number of unlimited partitions. And while creating the partitions, we need to make sure that there should not be any overlap in the partitions. Otherwise, we are counting the same number twice, and if that is the case, then we are presenting the wrong information to the end user. So we need to make sure that partitions do not overlap at all. And in this video, we are going to explore the partitions and aggregations, more into aggregations rather than partitions. And we would like to see the relation between the partitions and aggregations. The question is, can partitions exist without aggregations? The answer is yes. When we are creating the cube first time, we can build this cube and process the cube without creating any aggregations. And why do we need the aggregations? Before answering that question, let's go back one step. And why do we need partitions? Suppose we have the data we have, say, from 2005 to 2013, something like that. So we have like 8 or 9 years of data in the fact table. And each and every time to process the cube, if you are going to process all the data in the fact table, it will take a lot of time. So if we split the data into partitions using, say, for example, year, and once we process the partitions from, say, 2005 by year 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like that, and then the last partition for 2013 and we need to process only the last partition, for example, that is 2013, while processing the cube. So to reduce the processing time, partitions will help us to reduce the processing time. And let's go to the aggregations. Why we need the aggregations for our cube? In the fact table, we have the data at the granular level. For example, in our cube, we have the data at the NAICS and state or county and the year level data. Suppose I want to see for a particular industry what is my total number of revenue, annual payroll for 1 year for all the industries, across all the industries. Then if you don't have the aggregations, then the analysis services cube has to aggregate that information on the fly. So the query response time will be more. To reduce the query response time, we need to create the aggregations. Aggregations will help us to process the queries faster and present the data to the user in a quick manner. Now let's go to the Visual Studio and see how we can create the what is the process of creating the aggregations. We are looking at the Visual Studio and I already created a cube, and we have data source view, and we have dimensions, 3 dimensions. Sorry. And we already created the cube. And if you look at the data source view, this is a star schema, we have one fact table at the center and all the dimensions are and all the dimensions are related to the fact table through a dimension tables will have the primary key, fact table will have the foreign key. And here the measure group is having so many measures here. number of establishments 1 to 4, and the max is number of establishments 5,000 or more. And we have annual payroll data, and we have total mid-March employees, etc. Sorry. Okay, let's go to the partitions and have a look at the partitions. And we have only one partition here, and I would like to mention one more point here. Suppose we have two fact tables in our cube, then there will be two partitions, default partitions for those two measure groups. So each measure group will have its own partition, maybe more than that. That depends upon how we are going to create the partition. The basic minimum is one measure group will have at least one partition. Okay, now if you see, we don't have any aggregation assigned to this partition. If you highlight and if you see the message here, it is saying, okay, you have more than 500,000 rows, but no aggregation is assigned to this partition. So that's what it is saying. So if you aggregate the data, then the query processing time will be faster, and we can the way to create the partition aggregations is, if you come to this partitions and aggregations tab on the Visual Studio, and we have two options here. One is design aggregations and usage based optimization. So design aggregations is like, basically we are telling the analysis services, okay, here is, take these parameters to create the aggregations. That's design aggregations from clicking on this button. And the usage based optimization is, suppose we already created the cube and then processed the cube and deployed the cube, and the end users are starting using the cube, and we collect those sequels, and then we can create the aggregations based on those sequels. So we can see, okay, what are the top 10 queries, something like that, and see, and we need to make sure that, okay, we create the aggregations based on those parameters the end users are using. So that's the usage based optimization. And in this video we are going to design the aggregations using the aggregation wizard. And right now at this point of time we don't have any aggregations. We have not defined any aggregations, and we have not assigned any aggregation to any partition. So let's create one aggregation, and I clicked on the aggregation wizard, and it is showing me the aggregation design wizard and review aggregation usage. And here we have all the dimension tables here. And the options are default, full, none, and unrestricted. The default aggregation rule is used for the dimensional attribute, and full means this attribute will be part of all the aggregations you are going to create. So it will participate, this attribute will participate in each and every possible combination the aggregations you are defining. And none means this attribute will never participate in any of the aggregations. And unrestricted means there is no restriction of usage of this attribute in any of the aggregations. And then a normal process, what we do is we take into the defaults and then we'll process the aggregations. In the first run, that's what we are going to do, and see how many aggregations it is being the wizard is going to create for us. In the second run, we do a little bit differently. We create another aggregation using different parameters, and we will see how the aggregation looks like at the end, and then we will compare this aggregation 1 and aggregation 2, aggregation design 2, and see how it differs between those two aggregation designs. So let's take the defaults at this point of time and then click next. And here the fact table, we have 30 million rows, and the Nikes, it's already calculated for us the number of rows here, and the year 14 years, we have data for 14 years, and the county we have 3100 counties, something like that. And in this case this is fine. Suppose we are designing this analysis services cube in development, so we may not have the entire data from production in our development, so the number of rows will differ from development to the production. So in that case, if you want to design a little bit accurately, or accurate design is to mention the number of rows in the production once we are going to deploy this analysis services cube into production. That's what we have to do here. For example, in the production, if you have say 100 million rows, then probably we are going to use that number here. But in our case, in this our fact table is having only 30 million rows, so we are going to use that number here, and then click let's say count. It already counted. So, and here the aggregation options, we have 4 options here based on the disk usage. Okay, if we have any disk limitation, something like that, then probably we can use the first option. Okay, estimate storage reaches 100 MB or 200 MB or whatever it is. And the second option is, okay, aggregate till, create the aggregations till reach performance gain reaches say a certain point. So say in this case this is like 30%. So create the aggregations till the performance gain reaches 30%. This I click stop. The third option is click stop. Okay, keep on aggregating till I click stop. And the last option is do not design any aggregations. Let's see the first option, the third option, start, and it is aggregating. It is giving us, okay, so it created for our data set, for our data based on our fact table, it created 7 aggregations. And next, and we are going to save the aggregations but do not process them, because it is going to take some time to process these aggregations. So just we will save this aggregation, and then we'll design another aggregation, and then we can see we will compare these two aggregations. Say let's say finish. And here if you want to go to the advanced tab and select the aggregation design we created just now, so we have 7 aggregations starting from 0 to 7. So it's always starts with 0, and we have like 7 aggregations here. Okay, now let's go back and do another aggregation design. This time we are going to say, okay, keep this attribute in all the aggregations we are going to design here, and we can select, already this one is already selected, so just we will change one, and then we will take next, and then like we discussed, okay, take the number of record count here, it already counted, and then we already added to the grid, and it is showing in the grid. And this time we use the option performance gain reaches 30%. Okay, create the aggregations till the performance gain reaches 30%, and then start. Okay, it created only one aggregation for us, but it is using about 12.8 MB. Next, and then we are saving this as aggregation design 1. So we have 2 aggregations here. Aggregation design 1, we have only 2 aggregations, and aggregation design is we're having 7 aggregations. But if you go to the partitions, this partition, the partition we have here, this aggregation design 1 is already assigned to the partition 1 here. and the squiggly line here saying that we have more than 20 million rows, so it is advising us to create more partitions to split, to get the number reduced to less than 20 millions. And here assign aggregation wizard. Right now aggregation design has been assigned to this one. Or we can change, if you want to change the aggregation design, okay, if you want to assign aggregation design 1 to this partition, we can change that also, and then we can process the partitions. And here we are using the aggregation design 1 assigned to the partition county business pattern partition. So here if you look at this one, because we are not using this aggregation, so we can remove this aggregation altogether. Or if you want to change the assigning assignment, then say this is aggregation design. Okay, then this aggregation design has been assigned to this partition, and this aggregation design is not, we are not using this one. So this is the way to create the aggregations and assign them to the partitions. So to summarize, aggregations are necessary to improve the query response time. When we are deploying the cube to production, make sure that we design the aggregations and then assign the aggregations to the partitions, and then deploy the cube and then process the cube. Thanks for watching.